Select Pro or Import Direct pads for just $20. Product availability. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
You're listening to Inside Week 1 of Trump's hostile takeover of D.C. police. A news story written by Megan Flynn, Jenny Gathright, and Jonathan Edwards, and read by an AI-generated voice. As D.C. Mayor Muriel E. Bowser and Attorney General Brian Schwalb exited federal court Friday, saying the police chief remained in command of her force, on the ground the reality was murkier. Deputy White House Chief of Staff Stephen Miller was entering D.C. police headquarters, surveying the department President Donald Trump had declared to be under federal control. Now, as Trump's asserted takeover enters its second week, the administration's push to crack down on immigration and expand deportations is a central point of friction in one of the greatest home rule crises the city has faced. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi is seeking to compel the D.C. police to fully cooperate with federal immigration enforcement, the issue that lit the fuse leading to the city to suing the administration Friday, as federal officials also sought total control of the force. A federal judge could rule on the issue this week. Miller's presence at police headquarters showed how rapidly the White House has become embedded in the machinery of local law enforcement in the nation's capital. And it highlighted how much the first week of the federal takeover has focused on the topic he has directed most intensely: immigration enforcement. As of Sunday, more than 40% of the roughly 300 arrests reported by the White House targeted undocumented immigrants. As officials await a decision on just how far local police will be pulled into the administration's immigration agenda, U.S. District Judge Anna Reyes has indicated that D.C. Police Chief Pamela A. Smith could remain in charge of the force. But Reyes also signaled that she is likely to allow Bondi's immigration directives, which could equip the Trump administration with wide latitude to give orders. If the immigration directives move forward, D.C. could confront an unprecedented quandary: whether to comply with or resist an agenda that fuses a crackdown on crime with the removal of undocumented immigrants and homeless people from city streets. Trump has already suggested that if the agenda works here, it could be exported to other liberal urban centers. Addressing reporters Monday, Bowser, Democrat, said that while nobody is against driving down any level of violence or taking guns off the streets, she questioned the Trump administration's focus on immigration enforcement, as well as the expected influx of hundreds of National Guard troops from Republican states to D.C. streets. According to the mayor's office, as the city awaits a court ruling, D.C. law and police policies limiting cooperation with federal immigration authorities remain in effect. Anytime you have a surge of officers, I would expect you have some results, such as with gun arrests, she said. What is not necessary, however, is this commandeering, the attempted commandeering of the force itself, the expanded work that is not related to violence. Facts on the ground did not support the president's executive actions, Bowser said, criticizing the use of the American military to police Americans. This doesn't make sense. You know it doesn't make sense. The numbers on the ground in the district don't support 1,000 people, apparently referring to National Guard troops, coming to Washington, D.C. The president, who already has control of the D.C. National Guard, derives limited authority over D.C. police under an untested provision of the D.C. Home Rule Act that allows him to use D.C. police for a federal purpose if he declares an emergency, as Trump did last week. Although violent crime rose to historic levels in 2023 and remains a concern for many D.C. residents, it has fallen substantially over the past 2 years, as is true in most major U.S. cities, according to police data cited by the Justice Department. Miller outlined the agenda on Fox News on Saturday, bragging about federal officials seizing illegal guns, targeting more than 70 homeless encampments that had scarred and disfigured the public streets, and saying that immigration and customs enforcement agents were embedded among local police. We're finding these criminally illegal aliens, and at the first opportunity we're picking them up, and we're sending them out of the country, he said. Over the course of 5 days, what started off as a collaborative partnership to fight crime, as Bowser and Smith initially called it, had become what Schwalb called an illegal hostile takeover, after Bondi issued orders seeking to install an emergency police commissioner and upend the overwhelmingly democratic city's policies that prevent cooperation with ICE. That was a red line that we could not allow to be crossed, Schwab said of Bondi's order, noting in an interview that when the order landed late Thursday, he and Bowser and everyone in city government immediately agreed the time had come to sue. Bowser declined an interview. Yet while they insisted Smith remained at the helm of the department, behind the scenes, Smith communicated only sparsely throughout the week with the full department, as confusion about who was really in charge festered, according to multiple sources within law enforcement, many of whom spoke on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak on the record. By Friday, a photoshopped version of a DC police missing persons flyer was circulating around the department. Critical missing, the flyer said. Underneath it was a photo of Smith. After Bondi ordered full compliance with immigration, the chief did not issue any updated department-wide guidance, according to 2 law enforcement sources. Despite writing in a court filing that Bondi's order would be placing the lives of MPD officers and district residents at grave risk, given confusion could arise over the chain of command. Those decisions were playing out nightly in the field, as Trump's surge in federal law enforcement and deployment of the National Guard transformed city streets and iconic Washington destinations. Each evening for the past week, DC police teams have joined with federal law enforcement from multiple agencies for briefings. Federal and local law enforcement officers teamed up in groups. Many went not just to high-traffic nightlife and tourist zones, but also to some of the city's higher crime neighborhoods east of the Anacostia River to pursue drug and gun arrests, according to 2 people familiar with the briefings who were not authorized to speak publicly about sensitive operations. Within the force, some officers have been grateful for the boost in resources, which allowed them to proactively enforce quality-of-life offenses and provide more of a presence in high-crime neighborhoods they said desperately needed more policing. But others were wary of the federal takeover, and particularly an about-face on immigration enforcement policies. The federal show of force in the past week was indeed overwhelming at times, as Trump had promised it would be. On Wednesday night, more than a dozen FBI agents rolled up to Washington Circle in NW, flanked by more DC police, and roused a few homeless people from a tent who were already planning to clear out in a few days on city orders and were befuddled by all the fuss. Megan Abraham, 37, and her boyfriend said they had heard the president's rhetoric wanting them removed from the streets to go to a shelter, a facility for treatment, or to jail if they refuse. "I'm not a criminal, so what are you arresting me for?" she said, as federal agents swarmed the sidewalk and the bright lights of TV news cameras descended on the tent. "I'm not an insane person, so why am I going to a mental hospital? His job is here. I've lived here since 2009. This is my home." The next day, their tents were removed. On Saturday afternoon, federal agents tackled a food delivery driver, a Venezuelan national the Department of Homeland Security said was in the country illegally, who emerged from a coffee shop and ran as he noticed agents were following him. They whisked him away in an unmarked black car. Immigration enforcement operations appeared to particularly unsettle some DC residents, as ICE became more visible across the city. At a checkpoint on 14th Street NW on Wednesday night, onlookers held signs warning motorists that ICE was present, while others heckled and filmed federal agents asking drivers questions. After a man was arrested by ICE at the Home Depot in Northeast Washington, neighbors in Brooklyn began raising money for his legal defense. Organizations that aid immigrants in the DC region worried that rather than make the city safer, the federal operation would make people afraid to call the police for fear that ICE would show up with them. These are ripple effects that are going to have a traumatic effect for years to come. Anush Sanai, Associate Director Legal Programs at IUDA, an immigrant services organization. Some city lawmakers feared that the very existence of DC's self-government and limited local democracy were on the line. Councilmember Zachary Parker, D Ward 5, said focusing on crime was a losing battle. "I don't think that's what this moment is really about," he said. "I believe it's about power and control and the Trump administration's attempt to take over our city, frankly." A White House official said Trump's crackdown on crime was about keeping his promise and doing what's best for the American people. "It will help the folks who live here and the folks who visit here." Trump has long been focused on fixing Washington. As far back as August 2023, when Trump was indicted by a federal grand jury here on charges of conspiring to overturn his 2020 election loss, he denounced the city on social media as filthy, dirty, falling apart, and very unsafe. In October of that year, he said on Truth Social that a federal takeover of the city would be a part of his campaign platform. At events during the past week, he declared he had plans not only to reduce violent, menacing street crime, but also to drive out homeless people, clear and throw away their camps, revamp parks, get rid of graffiti, repair medians and repave roads, and ensure through an overwhelming federal show of force that DC will not be a sanctuary for illegal alien criminals. On August 11th, after Trump announced he was taking over the DC Police Department and deploying the National Guard, Bowser was silent for 5 hours. She and the entire DC Council, Attorney General and top cabinet officials called a meeting to try to figure out how to respond to an unprecedented, unforeseen use of federal power. The elected officials struggled to agree on an approach, according to multiple attendees, some of whom spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe a confidential meeting. Some lawmakers wanted more forceful legal pushback, but Bowser was not ready to go that far. She insisted that a plain reading of the law left Smith in charge of the department, and that if they could simply try to work with federal officials on crime for 30 days, they could outlast Trump's operation with the city's local government emerging unscathed. Even some of the mayor's most frequent critics said they ultimately understood the gravity of the mayor's position, given the stakes for the city. Her approach is to remain calm, which is good, said Councilmember Brianne K. Nadeau, D. Ward 1. Her approach is to not antagonize, and not all of us take that approach, right? Some of us really just want to poke the guy in the eye. Overall, Nadeau said, the mayor essentially pledged, this is the challenge, and we're going to get through it, and her job is to lead us calmly through it. Councilmember Christina Henderson, I at large, said that she was willing to hear out the partnership approach. Federal agents had already been hitting city streets starting August 8th, when the White House ordered an increase in patrols around federal property and downtown in the first sign of a broader operation. August 11th, Henderson said, was lawmakers' first opportunity to meaningfully ask Smith how that initial effort had been going, and they learned it had so far been manageable. But cracks emerged early. Henderson said one of the first questions she asked Smith was about the plan for immigration enforcement, believing that it was inevitable that Trump would escalate deportation efforts as part of the crackdown. She didn't have an answer at that point, Henderson said, leading her to push the chief to develop a plan. Terry Cole, the Drug Enforcement Administration chief, whom Trump and Bondi sought to tap as the emergency police commissioner, became visible to officers, attending roll calls, speaking with officers about their resource needs, and going on ride-alongs with top DC police officials, according to a police official familiar with the situation who was not authorized to speak to the media. In contrast, DC's police chief was noticeably silent, multiple law enforcement sources said. Trump announced that he would federalize the police department around 10 a.m. August 11th, but Smith did not send a department-wide email about it until shortly before 6:45 p.m. In it, she said the executive order may have been a shock for many, but downplayed the shift. Our relationship working with our federal partners is nothing new to MPD, Smith wrote. The next significant department-wide communication did not come until Thursday, when Smith issued a new policy expanding cooperation with federal immigration enforcement agencies. According to two people familiar with Smith's decision, Bowser did not know that the new policy was coming. Smith's order said DC police could share information with federal immigration authorities about people not in their custody, including at traffic stops. It also allowed them to transport federal immigration enforcement officers and their detainees. A DC police spokesman framed it as a clarification that did not affect rules that prohibit police from arresting undocumented immigrants or helping ICE enforce civil immigration violations. The move alarmed DC's immigrant communities, where advocates felt the department was walking back a long-standing promise to avoid collaboration with ICE. It also angered many DC elected officials. Councilmember Janice Lewis George, D. Ward 4, said Thursday that while she had understood the mayor's earlier collaborative posture toward the president as a way to protect the core of DC's limited self-government, at a certain point, there's some concessions that you can't make. Reporting undocumented residents to ICE was a goddamn thick line that shouldn't be crossed, she said. We are handing over the keys of autonomy to the Trump administration if we start just complying with their asks, Lewis George said. At the same time, Smith's guidance backfired when it failed to placate federal officials. The new federal overseers did not want to compromise. They wanted, as Bondi made clear Friday, full cooperation. Bondi's order, which came hours after Smith's guidance, moved to completely suspend D.C.'s policies, limiting immigration cooperation, and directed Bowser and Smith to recognize Cole as the emergency police commissioner, who would assume all of Smith's powers. She also ordered maximum enforcement of a public space law that could be used against homeless people. Schwab had been working on a legal case all week, and after conferring with the mayor, who on Thursday night was in Martha's Vineyard to pick up her 7-year-old daughter from a family event and bring her back on a flight the following day, they decided to pull the trigger. Any suggestion that there was a collaborative relationship going on ended, and we needed to go and make sure that did not happen, that we did not lose command and control over MPD, Schwab said. Because the section of the Home Rule Act that Trump relied on has never before been used, the city's legal case could set a precedent regarding presidential power in the capital city. Heading into Monday, unease permeated D.C. government and lawmakers as they awaited a ruling, a realization that they're just getting started, Nadeau said. It was only the end of week 1, with 21 more days to go. Trump already indicated he planned to ask Congress to extend his emergency, which could be difficult in the politically divided Congress. In the lawsuit, Schwab noted evidence that the Trump administration hopes its control over D.C. law enforcement will last much longer than 30 days. Cole's temporary MPD access card has an expiration date of August 13, 2026. Emma Uber, Jeremy Roebuck, Jasmine Golden, Brittany Shamus, Sophia Solano, Dan Rosenzweig-Ziff, and Liz Goodwin contributed to this report.